Welcome, everyone. We are at Layer 8 Conference in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm here with Tracy Maleeff. She is InfoSec Sherpa on Twitter and a
Yes.
presenter here today. It's nice to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is quite an honor.
My favorite topic is empathy,
Yes.
especially in the context of social engineering.
Yes.
And empathy is just a great topic, not just for social engineering, not just for business and leadership, but also, I think, personal skills and getting along with your friends and family, right?
Definitely.
It's all about empathy. When it was presented to me in the business context, I actually spoke last year, part of my talk, that Chris Adnagi gave me feedback on as well, and said empathy is an important part of what we do. And
Sure.
so it was so wonderful to hear you say that basically your talk is about empathy in a social engineering context.
Well, not my talk today, but
It's in. I'm
I've
sorry. You
given.
have a talk
I
on
do
that. I'm
have a
sorry.
talk that
Yeah.
I give. No, that's okay. It's called Empathy as a Service to Create a Culture of Security.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just shorten it to Empathy as a Service.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is I utilize my background as a librarian to help
Really?
people.
They don't. Do they still have librarians
They
today?
do,
Okay, good.
yes. Jeez.
It's
Uh,
some stuff is still in the library, right? Not on
well,
the internet. I get, but
okay, but that you still need a librarian to help curate information, to help
agreed.
to do research. Now, keep in mind, I worked mostly in law firm
Mm-hmm.
libraries, so I did a lot of research, legal and otherwise, which is why I'm speaking about OSINT later today.
Mm-hmm.
My talk is called Lawyers, Guns, and Money: An Introduction to Legal, Government, and Business Research.
Interesting. But that's interesting in the context of a librarian as a curator of knowledge, which is something we very much need today that I think we've
Hmm.
lost sight of. I
Yes,
even think in our own archives, there's not much curation that, and it
sure.
could certainly benefit people if that was done.
Yeah,
So,
so when I made my career pivot into InfoSec, I
hmm,
realized that there was a real lack of organization of information, but also dealing with end users,
yes.
because it's a principal core foundation of librarianship, of dealing with the end user with respect, dignity, empathy,
I
and
love that. And you're right. Those are two problems we have today for sure.
exactly. So I created this talk called Empathy as a Service, and I base it upon the library principle of what's called a reference interview.
Hmm.
And what it is if a patron to a library wants to find out some information, then you are tasked with trying to draw that out of them because necessarily people don't
Yes. They don't know how to communicate. Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't know the
right.
right words or they don't know how to describe it. So it's this 7 point plan of how to elicit
Hmm.
basically what that person wants. So what I
This is
did.
before we get to the Dewey Decimal System, right?
Yeah, and that's only public and school libraries. I dealt with
Okay,
Library
gotcha.
of
Yeah.
Congress, which is a whole other McGill
It's a different
there.
system, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, so I converted this or correlated this 7 point plan
Hmm.
to InfoSec of how InfoSec people should deal with end users, especially when it comes to phishing.
Hmm.
You know, rather than saying what did you do, ask well, what action did you take when that email arrived?
Hmm.
Because it's hard to ask the question what did you do in a nice way
It is.
without being an accusation.
There are certain questions that I struggle with today that I have to ask of people sometimes where I don't want to come off and have them be defensive, and I don't want to see them like I'm on the offense, but I really would like the answer to the question, but how do you ask it nicely?
So
Yeah.
you'll ask things like, well, what action did you take?
Hmm.
What happened next? Things like the things rather than of questions of blame.
Right.
So it's
Yeah, what
this.
happened next rather than like, well, what
What
did you
did you
do
do?
after
Yeah,
that? Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes it's helpful even to show them a screenshot. So, you need to do your pre-texting,
Hmm.
go and click on the link on your safe machine and see that it's the OSINT, sorry, the O365 fake login page
Right, right.
and show them that. So, oh, okay, so you clicked on the link and then you saw this, is this what you
Hmm.
saw? And they'll say yes, and then you can handle it from there because people are going to be scared to
Hmm.
contact the security team or be contacted by them. So you need to make them feel as comfortable and the more comfortable they are, the more they're going to disclose information that will help with your incident
Even
response.
subconsciously too, if you put someone at ease,
Hmm.
subconsciously they'll release more information. Yeah.
And things like I gave this talk about 3 weeks ago at the Health ISAC conference, and I said if you email your end user or send them an instant message, the very first thing should you have a salutation, which
Hmm.
is dear or hello, so and so. Thank you for your email. Thank you for your call. They didn't have to tell you
Right.
that they clicked on something. They didn't have to submit that email as suspicious. You thank them for their time. Put them at
Even if it's
ease.
that, like, 3 seconds or 5 seconds, they're making a decision to click a button that says report this is phishing and then move on with their day.
Hmm.
They still, it's longer period of time than them just clicking the button, right?
Hmm.
They had to process the information coming in, make a decision, am I going to report this or not, and then click the report button and then move on with their day. So they're still slowing down their workflow to help you
Exactly.
and the business be more resilient,
So
right?
thank them for
Yeah,
that.
agreed.
And then if they thank you, I have the opinion that you don't say you're welcome. You're not doing them a favor. You're doing your job.
Hmm.
Your response is my pleasure to help,
Right,
my
right.
pleasure to assist you, or just my pleasure. And I know I can hear people's eyes rolling sometimes when I say that. It really doesn't take that much time out of your day.
Yeah, those little
And
things
that
matter. I
it
agree
builds
with
it
you,
builds
Tracy. Yeah.
allies. Yeah, it
Hmm.
builds allies because I want people to feel comfortable. I'd rather find out from a user that they clicked on something rather than get a similar at 4:59 on a Friday when I'm trying to get out of there
Hmm.
because something was just left to fester.
Right.
Like tell me, feel comfortable to tell me right away, let's work through this. Let me ask you some questions and also make them feel empowered. Put kind of make them feel like they're driving the investigation
Right.
of,
Right.
what information do you have that you can tell me about this?
Because
So
you'll get more and better information from them.
if they feel
Yeah.
like that they're empowered
Hmm.
because they think they're in trouble.
Yep.
So you just kind of flip that. So this is all from Library World.
That's
And
awesome. I love it. I love it.
so I've been doing my best, with my library skills to bring that to InfoSec with like my talk today and my empathy talk
Hmm.
and just other organization of information. I've been trying to spread the good word about
Right.
having organized information is more efficient.
Yes. Well, and I like it in the context of your librarians help you find the information and help curate that information, which is, I think, something a lot of us aren't accustomed to anymore. Like, we're like, oh, I need this information. I'm just go on Google and, like, just grind through it and try and find it. So, and I
Exactly.
think it's kind of the reverse thing too. If you're in InfoSec, you want to help others curate, do the curation of that information together, right? You're pulling information out of those users to then use in an investigation, which
Exactly.
is,
Yeah. There's the whole in librarianship. There's this whole concept of being a steward of information.
hmm
Know where things are, and even if you don't know the answer, because it's not always a trivia question.
yeah, you got to
It,
know where to get it.
it's know how to find things.
Hmm.
One of my classes so I have a master's degree in library and information science.
Hmm.
One of my grad school classes was literally every assignment was just, showing my work. It didn't really matter the answer.
Right.
It was you had to show how you got to that answer, and sometimes it was incorrect.
Hmm.
There were better ways to do things. So that whole class was all about your research method.
Right.
And
Right.
that was just a wonderful experiment in thought process and things like that.
And I like that as now there's so many different applications of your skills,
Hmm.
Tracy. One of those I think is in interviews as well.
Hmm.
And I try to structure my interviews where I want to see how you're going to derive and come to that answer, not necessarily whether you know the answer to a specific thing or not. Because, like, let's be honest, nobody knows everything, right?
Correct.
And I could be missing out on a perfectly valid candidate just because they know the answer to, like, one or two specific questions. That matters little to me. I want to know, how are you going to get that answer, right?
Yeah, definitely. I like to tell the story of when I had the interview for the job that I currently have. It was the same day as WannaCry.
Oh,
And because of the time zone difference, I don't think the scale of it had fully hit
sure.
yet, but it was just starting to pop up in dribs and drabs. But it was enough that on my drive to the interview, I actually anticipated. I thought a good interviewer is going to ask me something about
Yep.
that. So I decided to take a gamble, which was the correct one. My instincts were correct. Was I think I'm going to be asked some examples of what I would do to mitigate
Mm-hmm.
that. So I anticipated that question, and even though I don't have a technical background, I came up with three of my best non-technical answers
Mm-hmm.
to mitigate that. And that must have impressed because I got the job.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so cool. I love the application of what you've learned in your area of expertise in library science applied to information security. That was eye-opening for me. Thank you so much,
Thank
Tracy.
you.